Okay, welcome back. Something that I have been thinking about a little bit that I wanted to touch on is sort of like being good enough. And what I'm thinking right now when it comes to like, both when it comes to the app and when it comes to the channel and everything in life, essentially, I think that most likely you don't get the success or the thing that you want until you're actually good enough for that thing, if that makes sense. And so for these videos that I'm making right now, even though there's a fair few people actually watching them, more than I would have expected at this stage, I don't feel like I'm good enough at what I'm doing right now. Right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to practice the whole thing that I'm doing to get to the point where I will be good enough to actually be worth the amount of like views or subscribers or whatever that I might end up getting. But to get there, you kind of have to practice this thing. And one of the main insecurities I think that I have, and one of the main things that I'm trying to practice with this specific channel is speaking, essentially, like speaking unstructured, because I'm very bad at that, and I feel like I'm bad at that in most situations, like even in personal life. Like it's a little bit difficult or different talking to a camera, because I feel like there's more pressure to make sense. So like mid-sentence I can start to question the point that I'm trying to get to, which means that I will end up like having to change what I'm about to say, because I realize that, well, the point that I'm trying to get to maybe isn't actually where I want to go, so I need to change directions. And when I do that on camera, I feel like it's sort of hard to follow my line of reasoning. And that's one of those things that where I just don't feel like I'm good enough at that yet for it to make sense to get like, let's say, hundreds of thousands of views or people watching these videos. I don't feel like I'm necessarily my communication skills aren't good enough yet to the point where I think it would be interesting for that many people to be watching these videos. I feel like half the time I don't make sense, and most of the time I forget what I'm about to say, and I lose track of the point that I'm trying to make because I start to question what I'm saying. And what I want to kind of get to with this is that it's very similar to the app as well, where I'm trying to think, well, we can't launch something that is going to be perfect and it's going to be deserving of millions of users straight away. That's just not going to be possible. Like, and when I say deserving, I don't mean like me as a person, that I don't deserve people to watch me, in the sense that like I'm not worth anything. It's not that. It's just that like when people can go watch someone else that might be better at programming and better at explaining things and just more gifted in the communication area, or maybe just more interesting in whatever way, then it doesn't really make sense. Like, why should I be getting X amount of views, X amount of users to an app when the app just genuinely like isn't good enough yet, and when the videos that I make just aren't good enough yet, my communication skills aren't good enough yet. They might get to the point where it would be interesting to listen to me talk about things. I don't feel like I'm quite there yet, but the only way to get there is to practice this thing, and hopefully along the way I will get better and better, and from what it seems like right now, there are people that are following this channel. I don't understand why quite yet, because even saying the things that I'm saying right now, I just feel like half of it maybe, I feel like it'd be hard to understand what I'm even trying to say sometimes, or most of the time. And but I do feel like I'm getting a little bit better at it when I'm practicing this, and since I'm doing it 4 days a week, hopefully if I do like, what's it called? Deliberate practice, where I'm like deliberately practicing trying to speak and be more, not necessarily articulate, but just more a better communicator, if that makes sense. If I'm practicing that, then hopefully in 2 months, I'll be better than I am right now. And in 6 months, I'll be better than I am in 2 months. And within like 2 years, maybe I'll be really good at it. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just too much in my head about it. I don't know. But the idea is similar here with the app. My idea is not to, or what I want to try to do is launch a very small product that is not going to be great to start out with, but the scale of it and the reach of it, I guess, like the amount of users is going to be small enough to where I can experiment and I can fail and I can do things that if we got like 1 million users on day one, then you can't really experiment that much. And what if, like for instance, what if I made a video right now on this channel and it got like 2 million views on a whim because I made a video about a certain topic that's like super trending right now, and whatever thing I did in the video happened to be super interesting for people, but they're not necessarily, when they watch that video, they don't necessarily connect with me as a person, they connect with the topic because they're just like interested in what is this topic. And that will mean that the next video that I make, if I'm not already like a great communicator and like have all these skills in my backpack, then once I make the next video, there's really no reason why people would watch it, unless it's again on some sort of trending topic that's going to be a, they call things like unicorn startups, where it's almost like that, where you start something and it just takes off straight away and it does really well. It's really hard to do that multiple times in a row. And so unless you can reliably find those unicorns in terms of like videos, you have to have something that is within you that is interesting and that people would value listening to or watching, whatever. And right now I don't feel like I have any of that. I feel like building an app, publishing it, getting users, doing all that sort of stuff kind of adds some sort of credibility to me as a person. And that is one of the reasons that people might be interested in watching or listening to a video from me, even if I'm not a great communicator. Because if I have, like, let's say that I was the person that built Tinder, I think most people would want to listen to me no matter how bad I was at like communicating, because it's not necessarily, you're not looking for the clear communication or the articulate person. You're just interested in like, this person did something that was really cool and that is really interesting, and I can sit through a really bad explanation of things or like a really bad podcast with this person because I want to find those like little gems of like, what did they do and what was their journey like and what can I take from it that I can apply to my own life. So yeah, I guess there's like, the way that I'm thinking about everything that I do is like there's multiple ways, multiple levers to pull. And one lever could be that you have something that's really interesting. Like that's with YouTube, that's specifically true or especially true, where it's like the best way to make videos on YouTube that do really well is to do something that is really hard to do. Because if you do something that's really hard to replicate, then that almost by itself, or inherently will be interesting for people, because like, well, if I did, let's say that I did something that's relatively simple, just like running every single day for a year, that just becomes interesting, because you're like, well, that person didn't run, let's say that they didn't run at all for the previous part of their life, and then all of a sudden they started running on January 1st, 2024, and then they ran every single day for the entire year. You'd be kind of interested in that, because they've invested something. It's really hard to replicate it because they did it for an entire year, so it takes some sort of investment from you. That's why like Mr. Beast's videos at the start, some of the things that he did was just like sit and count to 100,000, and it becomes sort of interesting because it just takes so long to do. And even though the video itself, like the content of the actual video is not interesting at all, you're just watching someone count. It's like watching paint dry, I think, which I think is also a video that he did. But it's just one of those things where the only lever that he's pulling there is that he's doing something that's really hard to replicate. And one thing that is really hard to replicate is like building a Tinder or Facebook or Instagram, something like that. That's really hard to replicate, which means that in the Mr. Beast analogy, you can kind of become interested in watching him just count, even though that's super boring. You could become interested in watching like the founder of Tinder explain how they did it, even if they're a really bad communicator, because the thing that you're actually interested in is the really difficult thing that's hard to replicate. You're not really too focused on, like, it's great if they can actually communicate it and get their point across about what it was like and the lesson they learned and all that stuff. But the reason that you're watching it, or you can get through watching some really boring stuff, if you know that there's some other value in there. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pull that lever. I'm trying to build something that might actually end up being a somewhat popular app. And if that happens, that's one lever that I've pulled. The other lever is just trying to get better at talking to the camera, trying to become a better communicator. Doing some deliberate practice on that, which I'm trying to do in every video that I make here. And also the video quality is another lever that I could pull, like trying to hopefully have decent audio, even though I've struggled with that for the past few videos. And like buying the mic that they use in the Peaky Blinders show, and having a good camera, a good setup, making it look sort of nice, hopefully. All those things, I think, are levers that I'm trying to pull here to try to make this decently interesting to watch, or worth watching, at least. And so with the app, something that's really important, I think, for me at least, is to remember that the first thing that I'm going to launch is not going to be worth 1,000 downloads or 1,000 users. The first thing is just going to be a test thing where I can maybe give it to some friends, or like just test out the concept, see does it actually work out all the bugs, and improve upon it until it gets to the point where hopefully it actually is worth using for thousands of users. Because I think a lot of people too, with things like this, or with pretty much everything in life, it's hard to, I guess I can understand it because I've got another YouTube channel. Maybe not all of you know about that, but I have another YouTube channel where I've done videos that have millions of views. And I think something that's important to understand is, like, you have to make a very specific video for it to be worth watching for 1 million people. And I think what a lot of people do at the start is they make a video and they think that it's great, and it might be great for them. And I can make videos today that are great for me, that I really like to watch. But it's a different thing to make it, to have it be good enough to actually be worth watching for millions of people. Like it's a completely different thing, I think. So yeah, I don't know. That's a bit of a rant, me practicing talking again. But yeah, now we're going to see if the thing that we did yesterday, if that actually, if we actually got somewhere with that. So what I want to try to do is I'm going to try to run this now and see, because basically this is all created by Grok. All these pages, I basically tried to create a sign-up flow for the app, and all of this is designed by Grok. So we'll see if it actually works, or if there's something else that's wrong, or if there's something that's wrong with it. Okay, so it turns out that the problem, I guess now, I hope this is the problem, I don't actually know. I'm pretty sure, I should say. Sometimes I like discredit myself for even saying something that I actually think I know. But either way, what seems to be the case is that if you have a look at the resource file, so what I think is kind of annoying with this is that typically what you would do if you have a database, this is what you would typically do. We would have a user here called user. This is a model. And the user has an ID and it has a name, let's say. Then we have a phone call. And the phone call has an ID of some kind, just to identify the actual phone call. And then we have the caller. And this would be something where we could actually create a relationship where it references the ID of user. And then we could have a cold thing that could again reference the ID of a different user. So basically of user B and user A. And this is how simple you should be able to make an SQL database, because we should just be able to have these things referenced and we should actually not need to create anything else. But in Amplify, for some reason, we have to do this. We have to create another ID called caller ID here, and that can then be some sort of ID. Then we have to create another variable called caller, and that could be symbolized then the relationship to the call. So then this has to say that, well, we reference call, and what we're sending here is the caller ID. So we're sending the caller ID into this one. And then what we have to do here on caller, we have to do, well, this references user and it references the caller ID in user. And that's just for one relationship. If you want to do this relationship as well, we also have to create a called ID and then a called variable that references, that then belongs to, I guess, called, like, it's a different relationship. It's just so, like, we have to create 1, 2, 3, 4 extra variables where we could have just done with one. And that's what I don't get. I don't get why that has to be done. It seems like it's very unnecessary and it's not very programmery to need to do that. Like, a standard thing in programming is if you have to write something twice, you're doing something wrong. So this seems like the ultimate incorrect version of this. But what happened after I did that, after I changed that, because I was like almost stubborn about not wanting to change that, because first of all, I didn't think that was a problem, but I was like, how could that not work? Either way, after I ran that, or after I did that and then ran the model gen command again, all of a sudden it seems like it works. So let's see if we have the models the way that we expect. It looks like we have the models the way that we expect. Now can go here. Okay, and now if we run this, let's see what we get. Lib pages, sign up page 3. All right, we now actually got this to run. So we have a progress bar indication. Now we can set a name, Cal. We can select a birth date, 2nd of March. So okay, 2025. 2011, no, 2005. Okay. And we can add a profile picture if we want to, although that doesn't do anything, but that's fine. Next, all fields are required. Fuck. Either way, what we can do now is we can add all these things. We can just remove that button if we want to for now, and then add it back once because I think what we need to do is we need to add the permission for photos on the phone, and then we can add a photo, but then we also need to upload it to the database and do all that stuff, which is going to be another day's problem, but this seems really good. Now we can sign up to the app, and then once the app is signed up to, we get to these pages where we can actually create the profile, which is then going to be necessary for the next step, which is to actually connect with people and have conversations. Okay, well, we did solve the problem of creating the models today, and we also solved the problem of showing the page on the screen for actually starting to add profile information, which is good. Now I've got to go do some other things, but thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I'll see you in the next one, which will be on Monday.